So, welcome to our talk today on doctoral researchers navigating the current job market. What I'm going to cover today is a little bit about the current job market, and I've been trying to get as much up-to-date information as possible. Very helpfully, the ONS released a whole new set of job data information just before we started today, so may not be perfectly up-to-date, but I'll get you as up-to-date as I can. I'll also specifically address what we can tell about the academic job market as well, both over time and also what's happening currently. If you decide that you're not going to go for academia, then what other options are there for you as a PhD? And I'll talk about some of the smart tactics you can use to uncover jobs, and also ending with what kind of support you can get from the career service. Okay, so I'm curious, how confident are you feeling? Put in the chat how confident you're feeling, where 1 is low and 5 is high. So if you want to just let me know how confident you're feeling at the moment about the job market. Okay, I can see there's some things going in the chat there. Okay, Ben, what's the sentiment broadly?
Mostly 3s. We've had a couple 4s and a couple 2s. No one's wanting to go quite to the extremes of the scale. But yeah, we're sort of in the middling tendency.
Okay, that's really, I'm really encouraged by that, because that probably means that you as doctoral researchers are keeping a more kind of wary eye on the job market and all the kind of, the myths and legends which are out there, because the taught masters were very unconfident, but you're kind of much more realistic, I think. So what I do is I look to find good reputable sources of information, and one which I do like is the Recruitment and Employment Confederation, and that's like the trade association for all the kind of recruitment agencies and a whole load of other people who are involved in recruitment. And they've been tracking confidence both in the UK economy and confidence in making hiring and investment decisions. And they've been doing that for a long time. So what we can do is we can track it back to way before the pandemic started, way back in February 2019. You can see February to April 2020, everything fell off a cliff. The green line at the top is confidence in making hiring decisions, and the blue line underneath is confidence in the UK economy. So it all went very pear-shaped, but then it's kind of gradually risen back up, and we've had a big steep increase back to being confident about making hiring decisions and the UK economy, but that's also now started to take a turn. I think part of that is particularly driven by the confidence in the UK economy. You can see that confidence in making hiring decisions is still well above where it was just before. Actually, it's about where it was just before the pandemic hit. So that actually is kind of coming back quite well, but we've got that kind of prospect on the horizon of what's going to happen to the economy to worry about. Okay. So let's figure out what we can do to try and predict the future. Well, I've gone to a range of sources for this, and trying to kind of gauge where we're at the moment. So in terms of employment, we've got a quarter of working adults still working from home. That's what the ONS said in the last set of data I saw for the previous week. Over a quarter of working adults were still working from home. And I think that's something which is missed by a lot of people in government. There's kind of this assumption that we're all back at work. I haven't actually been on campus for work other than one meeting in the last 2 years. So, this is the reality for a lot of us, and it may be for you going forward. That obviously impacts city centre businesses. So you're getting retail and hospitality are still being quite badly hit in the big city centres, not so much in the town centres. That's kind of coming back to more of a normal style. And so if you start to think big picture, what's happening with the world of work, this will give you an idea about which sectors may be being affected by the different ways of working, even if employment's going to be going back to kind of normal levels. A lot of what's been driving the increase in employment is the increase in part-time jobs. But that's partly because those part-time jobs, those hospitality and retail jobs plummeted during the pandemic. So they're starting to come back. So there's a lot of kind of odd nuances underneath the headline figures that you're hearing about employment. But basically, we're up on where we used to be. Recruitment, Now, job adverts in January 22 were higher than in February 20. So that's pre-pandemic. So the number of adverts is actually increasing. Now, what you're finding there is it's mixed, it's all over the country. So the Northeast has got the highest increase in job postings, interesting, and London's got the lowest increase in job postings. In fact, London has taken a while to kind of come back again, that big city centre impact, both of people not coming into the centre to work, but also not necessarily people coming in both for tourism and for just kind of hospitality and leisure. So different effects in different parts of the country. However, most sectors are finding it tough to find the right staff now. As you could imagine, construction, which was very badly hit, hospitality, which is very badly hit, they're struggling now to find staff who maybe have gone elsewhere. They've decided on different careers. There's a lot of the EU workers who've maybe gone back to their home countries and maybe not thinking about coming back to the UK. So there's a lot of issues there. Not necessarily the kind of sectors which most PhDs are going to be looking at, but it kind of gives you a picture of what's happening with the economy overall. In terms of finding the right staff, the low points actually are law, financial services and accountancy. Overall, they're not struggling quite so much. They're still not quite needing a lot of people. Aviation, as you could imagine, in terms of travel, and architecture. I guess building works kind of got pulled back and they will start to come back later. You tend to find the construction sort of boots on the ground type stuff comes back first, and then kind of the planning and the architecture comes and follows later. So that's where we're at now. So what about the future? It's tricky to find anything which is specifically about the PhD job market. So what I've had to do is use graduate as kind of a proxy for that entry into professional level work. So what's happened with graduate vacancies is that the Institute for Student Employers, which represents about 250 of the biggest graduate recruiters and professional level organisations, they're predicting 20% higher vacancies in 2022 versus 2019, which is very, very positive. So again, built environment is leading the way, up 67% on where it was back in 2019, digital and IT going up. But the lower points, still in most cases increases, so public sector and charities going up, but only by 10%, law only by 3%, but retail and fast moving consumer goods are expected to be down. Okay, so some positive news, but it's a bit kind of patchy. What's going to happen in the near future? Well, this is where I go to the owner of the crystal ball, Charlie Ball, who knows most things about the UK graduate job market. Also got a particular interest in the PhD job market as Charlie, given that he's got a PhD himself. And as one of the leading social scientists working in the labour market, you'll be interested to know that he's a chemist, as am I, as is Ben. So chemists get everywhere. He's saying now that graduates are looking okay at the moment, as you can see those predicted graduate vacancies. But he's also flagged up that if that economy does dive, then that could change later. So, if you're thinking about getting into the job market sooner rather than later, I would suggest get ahead of that economic downturn if it's coming. One thing we're finding is that some graduates are now backing out of jobs that employers thought they'd already filled. So they're actually coming back into the job market with good graduate level jobs, graduate training schemes and so on, which they thought they'd already filled. Okay, let me just let you have the transcript. I'm very much thinking that hybrid working is going to be here to stay. And I think that's particularly prevalent, obviously, in information-based professional level work. I think we're going to see people grappling with what that's going to mean in the workplace, but that's something that you should expect to be a part of the workplace, which may suit a lot of you. Okay, so that's the general job market. What about academia? Well, academia is a little bit difficult to get a handle on, but I found some ways of trying to do that. So one way is to look to see what's being advertised on jobs.ac.uk, which is not where every academic job gets advertised, but it's where a large proportion of academic jobs get advertised. So been tracking the total number of jobs or the number of jobs in each discipline, which is on jobs.ac.uk at any one point. And because it's on the front page, you can track it back using things like the Internet Archive. So this goes back to 22nd of February 2019, so pre-pandemic. A lot of job markets, particularly around education, have a kind of a cycle. So they'll maybe go down at one point in the year, every year. So you just need to look and see it's not just a straight line recruitment. So the red line at the top is these are the disciplines which equate to our Faculty of Science and Engineering disciplines. The pink line in the middle is these are the disciplines which equate to our humanities disciplines, and the blue line is for our BMH disciplines, biology, medicine, and health disciplines. So you can see that actually, obviously we saw the falling off a cliff bit during the start of the pandemic, when nobody knew what was happening. Everybody held their breath to find out what a pandemic was going to mean for us. But it then gradually crept back up and kind of wobbled around. And where we're at the moment in terms of the number of ads on jobs.ac.uk, it's not much different to where we were just prior to the pandemic, other than science and engineering seems to have dropped quite a bit. Not quite sure what's behind that, but humanities and biology, medicine and health are pretty much back to where they were before. So that's positive. We haven't decimated the academic job market. But one thing you do need to think about, obviously, as a new PhD going in, if you think about the academic job market, is for each of those jobs that's being advertised, how many people are also looking? And there's a lot. So if you look at the job ads for lecturer, and this is based on a review which jobs.ac.uk did for last year, got an early view of that report. For lecturers, which includes every lecturer other than the kind of short sessional lecturers, the kind of short temporary sessional lecturers, those wouldn't be advertised at jobs.ac.uk. So these are more significant lectureships. There were over 8,000 adverts last year, but there were 769 people who viewed that advert, each of those adverts. So there's a lot of people looking at ads. If you're looking for researchers, which would be all the postdocs and maybe some early career fellowships, just under 12,500 adverts, but 759 views per advert. So you can see that, we're talking about 20-odd thousand job adverts, but new PhDs, over 24,500 new PhDs in the year. So you can you can gauge that those lecturer and researcher adverts are going to be available and of interest to not just this year's new PhDs, but last year's new PhDs, and the year before's new PhDs, and the year before's PhDs, and so on. And so that's kind of stacking up. And so there's a backlog of PhDs, and if they're all wanting to go into academia, there certainly aren't enough jobs to go around to everybody. It's not all bad in academia in terms of job market. One thing which always surprises people is the number of academics on full-time or on open-ended contracts. This is essentially permanent jobs in the UK in universities has gone up every year for as long as I can find data. It continues to go up, and these are permanent jobs. These are, it doesn't feel like that in academia, but that's what happens. In spite of maybe small kind of setbacks, still they track upwards. So that's still continued for 2019-20, which is the latest I was able to get the data for. One interesting point I wanted to have a look at was the age profile of that, because again, I know that PhDs come in all ages and sizes and ranges, but there is a preponderance of PhDs who are at the kind of the younger end. So if you use that as a proxy, this is the ages of academics on these open-ended contracts. It includes full-time and part-time. So it's just anybody who's on a permanent contract. So you've got a very few permanent academics who are under 25, obvious superstars. You've got about 7,000 who are in that age range 26 to 30, which is where a lot of our PhDs are going to be. And then obviously it goes up and you've got some more elderly. As I'm in this kind of age bracket, I'm allowed to call it elderly, I think. But again, you've got to think, Although there's like 7,000 people who've got academic jobs, permanent academic jobs, who are under 30 or under 31. That's the number of new PhDs each year. Okay. So some of you are going to make it. Some of you are going to end up as professors, which is going to be fantastic. And we need that. We need great new academics coming through, but not everybody, because that's the new number of new PhDs each year, which is being pumped into the system. Okay. Are there any questions which you want to refer to me, Ben?
Actually, no, we are question free at this point. I think there has been much to absorb. So yeah, let's press on.
Okay, let's just motor straight on. So academia is definitely an option for a number of you, but also there are other things that you can do. So what do PhDs do if it's not academia? Well, there's so many skills that you've got, so much information you've got, which could lead you to a whole range of different types of roles. You've all got an understanding of research and of what it's like working in the university or operating within the university sector. So if you just draw on that, you can look at other jobs in a university. There's the whole kind of spin outs or incubators, which aren't actually being an academic, but it's getting involved in things which are close to university sector. There's a whole range of jobs which are supporting university research, so things like research councils and funders. If you want to work in Swindon, you can go and work for one of the research councils. I would suggest that maybe looking at doing some remote working for the research councils might be useful, given that I spent, I think, 9 years of my working life in Swindon. Lots of lovely roundabouts in Swindon. Or there are professional associations, and I know people who actually during the pandemic, some of our PhDs have gone to work for professional associations for their particular discipline. There are jobs which support knowledge transfer. So for instance, things like the catapults, which are UK government organisations who are dedicated to linking up innovation from universities into industry. We've got the Medicines Discovery Catapult local to Manchester on the old AstraZeneca site at Alderley Park. Then there's jobs in non-university research organisations. So, not all research happens in universities. Obviously, there's industrial research, but there's also the AIRTO is the independent research and trade organisations. There are charities who do research. There are foundations who do research. You find some of those obviously in the humanities, some interesting organisations who do research outside university sector. And then there's industrial or social R&D. So there's plenty of things you can do and still be involved in research or in universities. But what about just all your general skills and knowledge, maybe discipline related? Well, policy research is something which PhDs are well set up for. The whole idea about think tanks. If you're interested in think tanks, there's a talk coming up, or there's a session which is being advertised at the moment about working in a think tank, which is coming up on the 23rd of February. It's being run by the Institute for Government, but it's not just about their think tank, it's about other think tanks as well. So that's worth having a look out for. Information's on Career Connect. There's also things like international development. I know quite a lot of our PhDs are interested in international development, maybe working with some of the big NGOs. People like the World Bank have come to recruit specifically targeting PhDs from Manchester. Got people who want to go into data science and analytics, obviously a big growth area, and there are so many PhDs. Anything which you're doing which is quantitative could lend itself towards data science jobs or jobs in finance. Information specialist roles, you are information managers, par excellence. That's what it's second nature to you to be able to manage information, to know about how to deal with information, judge and assess and analyze and report on information. That also can help you with consulting roles, so management consulting, economic consulting, technical consulting, and a whole range of other consulting roles. Comms roles, communications roles, particularly things like medical communications is big for PhDs, and there's particularly a large medical communications sector, which is based just south of Manchester in the Macclesfield area. And things like, related to that, things like health economics and strategy. So there's a whole range of things which are, these are just the things which a PhD would naturally set you up for, because on top of all that, you can do anything a graduate can do. So, it really is very wide open. So how do you find out, how are you going to choose from those? Well, there's a whole load of range you can do that, but things which are specifically PhD or doctoral researcher specific are, so great resource from the University of Birmingham. One of my friends, Holly Prescott, has put together an amazing resource. It took a lot of doing. And so she's put together this resource, which it says it's on the intranet, but she's assured me it will be available, open to anybody for as long as necessary. That QR code will take you directly to it because it's a really way big long URL. But it's got some of the kind of typical roles which people might go into. This is from a STEM background. So there's things like academic publishing, consulting, as we mentioned, medcoms, as I mentioned, but also things like patent law, software engineering, kind of even things like sales and other industry roles. But there's also some of the stereotypical things you might go into as with a PhD in humanities and social sciences. So again, some of them are similar, like academic publishing, consulting, but what about archives or microfinance or NGOs or the heritage sector? Speaking to some of our PhDs who've got some really interesting opportunities in the heritage sector and contacts through your PhD in order to be able to make that transition. If you want to look for inspiration, another really nice site which has been building over the years and has now started to branch out a little bit, which is why I'm happy to promote it now, is Research Careers. And this is, it's basically a blog with lots and lots of different profiles of people who've done PhDs who are in a whole range of different roles. Now, this has come out of the University of Oxford, I think supported by Oxford, but it has PhDs from a whole range of different areas, including one of the most recent ones is Danny White, who's one of our PhDs from the University of Manchester, who's done some amazing things. You maybe come across her with some of her sort of skills training support that she does within the PhD community now. So definitely recommend that for a bit of inspiration to prove that it can be done. To get out. Okay, so what kind of roles could you apply for? Well, by and large, I think most PhDs should be looking at direct entry roles rather than some of the graduate schemes. So these could be any size recruiter, it's about immediate hire. They advertise jobs when they actually need them. So you're not necessarily going to get this advertising a year in advance. And I think this is the vast majority of jobs for postgrads, but particularly for PhDs. And one of the key things to do here is if you spot an advert for a direct entry role, which you think, you know what, I could do that. Even if they don't advertise specifically for a PhD, you look at it and think, I've got the skills to do that. You apply as soon as you spot them. Because one thing we've discovered about the job market is that even if there's a closing date, it's probably best not to wait until that closing date, because when jobs get advertised, very often employers are starting to take applications. As soon as they start to take applications coming in, they'll start to offer interviews, and then they'll start to offer jobs. And sometimes you will find that even if there's a closing date, that the job has already been offered to somebody before that closing date. So that's a bit of inside info. Do not wait until the closing date, polishing that perfect CV, because you may have lost your chance. Okay, so how do you find these direct entry roles? Well, they're often you find adverts on generalist jobs boards, but specialist jobs boards, I think, are your best bet here. If you found a particular type of work that you're interested in, one place to have a look is, if you have a look on Prospects, prospects.ac.uk/job-profiles, I think is one of the most useful resources I use for postgraduates. It gives you a lot of information about different types of work, professional level work, including how do you get in, what are the salaries like, but it also talks about what employers take people in that kind of field, and where are the specialist jobs boards for that particular sector. And I think that's probably going to be better for you than a lot of the generic graduate jobs boards. Certainly a lot better than just typing into Google or Indeed to see if you can find a job. It's just overwhelming. This will get you the targeted roles. We do advertise things on Career Connect. I'm not going to kid you that there's masses of PhD jobs in there, but they're in there. So you just kind of got to keep an eye on them. Looking out for jobs that talk about research or analyst, consulting, and so on, to try to home in on the ones which are ideal for PhDs. But also looking at recruitment and employment agencies. the one reason I point people towards read.co.uk, which is a very, it's a big UK generic online agency now, as well as face-to-face agency. What it does have is you can look to see who's advertising using the Read platform, which isn't just advertised through read.co.uk. So you can look at direct employers, but also recruitment agencies, and filter it down by the type of work you're interested in. So this was a filter on the scientific recruitment agencies who were advertising through Read at that one point. And what it does is it shows you the specific specialist agencies for people who are interested in scientific work. So people like CK Group, which you maybe wouldn't have heard about if you're just looking at Indeed. It's a specialist recruitment agency, which is useful for scientific jobs, and others you can see there. Okay. Obviously, I did say you can look at all those graduate jobs. There are a few PhD entry schemes, but not that many. Some of the big consulting firms have PhD entry schemes. Some of the quantitative finance organizations and the investment banks will have PhD entry schemes. But by and large, people will advertise a graduate scheme and they'll be open to PhDs, but they're not necessarily going to be explicit about it. So these graduate schemes tend to be the big name recruiters. They often advertise jobs in the autumn to start the following autumn. So this is where the year in advance comes in. It's only those kinds of jobs where this happens. And it's about 10% of graduate jobs. So it's only, again, it's like the small elite end of the graduate job market. Now, because of that, PhDs might be quite competitive there. I do know PhDs, in the last 2 or 3 years who've gone for some of these graduate schemes. And I know people, if you want to get into things like finance, want to become an accountant, I know people with history PhD who've gone into graduate scheme with PwC or with finance scheme with United Utilities, both history PhDs for some odd reason. That can be your way in. Same with legal roles and some other specialist roles, particularly where you have to go through exams and so on. They often have a graduate entry scheme, which you would all go into whether you've got a PhD or not. Having said that, if you're applying for a graduate role, quite a lot of people who go for graduate roles have maybe done a placement as part of an undergraduate degree. They might have also done a master's and maybe even a year's work after that. So you're talking about somebody who may be not much, if any, younger than you are as at the end of a PhD. So don't feel that you're going to be too out of kilter with everybody else. Okay. The really nice thing about graduate schemes is in the UK job market, they often accept any degree subject, and that's a real benefit. It's not the case elsewhere in the world. It's something which is slightly kind of a quirk of the UK job market. So if you want to change from your specialist discipline into something which is maybe more business-based, where they will accept any degree subject, then it's worth having a look at some of those grad schemes. Where do you find them? Main graduate job sites, obviously on Career Connect. We've got a really good part of the career service website, which is called Which Career. And this gives you kind of graduate starting points for so many different types of careers. So I would definitely recommend that if you're looking for a particular sector. That and the prospect site are probably my go-to resources for starting to explore different parts of the job sector. And as I mentioned, if you are thinking about grad schemes, yes, I know a lot of them get advertised in the autumn, but just look for some of these unfilled vacancies which might be reappearing. Okay. Any questions, Ben, or can I keep motoring?
Not a sausage. Motor on.
Right, I shall carry on motoring. My apologies for talking very fast, but I'm afraid I grew up in Scotland. We just talk really fast. Okay.
I've been putting links in the chat as we've gone, so many of the things that you've been discussing, I hope people are finding.
Okay, thank you very much, Ben. Okay, so how are you going to find these jobs? Well, it's not just a case of looking for job adverts. There are lots of other things you can be doing to try to uncover jobs, and that goes from the passive to the active to the really proactive end. And I think, as with a lot of things, being very proactive can really increase your chances of finding interesting jobs which might be more appropriate to your particular niche specialism or your niche interests. If you go to put your CV with an agency, it's a fairly passive end. Maybe you can kind of improve your hit rate by going for a specialist agency, one of those things like CK Science or SRG and so on. So they might be interested in you. Agencies tend to be more interested in you if you've already got experience. Now you may be able to, if you've got work experience outside your education, that's brilliant. You may also be able to recast some of your PhD experience as experience rather than education. So it depends on how directly applicable it is to the kind of work that you want to go into. It's also great to have an online profile. So I have a LinkedIn profile. It's definitely worth having one of those now, I think, for a lot of people, even for academic jobs. I do know business school professors who've been approached on LinkedIn for other academic roles. So it's even invading academia as well. But it is still fairly passive. You realize, here's my profile. Now what happens? Bring the jobs to me. And in some cases they might, but more often you'll just kind of sit there. So how do you make it more active? Well, obviously you can get into that online search, typing so into the specialist job sites or just typing into Google. The proactive bit is about, though, trying to uncover jobs which never actually hit the job sites. It's about engaging with employers. And I think particularly if you're thinking about using some of your specialism to be able to find something which is a niche role, which could just be done by somebody with your particular discipline or particular background, then trying to engage with employers and letting them know you exist is going to be really effective. And also just letting other people know that you're looking, because you never know who's going to be able to say, well, you know what, my sister's married to somebody who works in that area. Why don't you have a chat with him? Okay, so that's definitely where I'd kind of steer you towards. So how can you do that? Well, I think there's kind of 3 tactics I always go back to. One of them is being curious. As soon as an advert, there's masses of competition. So how do you get to the employers that other people haven't found? Kind of often want to find the employers that you've never heard of, because if you've never heard of them, other people haven't either. So Career Connect, we've got the website where you've booked this session. So I know that you all know how to get on there. We've also got an organisations directory in there, which a lot of people are unaware of. And there's over 3,500 organisations who are on there, which you can then filter down by location, by sector, and so on. That's definitely worth having a look to see if there are organisations who want to promote themselves to University of Manchester students and graduates. Professional associations, as I mentioned, sometimes they can be a good source of trying to figure out, well, who else is a member of this association, where do they work? Or trade associations. This is one where if people challenge me saying, I want a list of employers who recruit in this area, this is my source. So if I try and find a trade association for a very niche area, I don't know, biomaterials in particularly ceramics, you can often find a trade association of companies who are involved in that sector who will kind of pull themselves together almost like a lobby group. And they often have lists of who is a member of that trade association. And that's your best bet for finding that very specialist niche list of employers in that particular area. It's not going to give you job sites, but what it will do is it gives you employers to be able to target directly. Also things like business and science parks. If you're wanting people who are kind of in emerging areas, or they're setting up, or maybe have been spun out of universities, that could be quite a useful source of finding employers who are maybe clustered round about a university. That can be a good place for maybe PhDs to be thinking about spinning out from, doing straight university research. So once you've found them, what are you going to do with them? Well, it could be as simple as finding out, where do these employers advertise? If you can't find out by looking at their website, contact them and find out where they advertise. Could you upload a CV onto their website? Some people will do that, particularly smaller employers where they won't necessarily want to put out an advert, but they're happy to see people contacting them directly. Okay, real story. I used to be a recruiter, an HR manager in the high-tech polymer science industry. It was really hard to find process engineers for our particular type of work. And so if anybody contacted us, just speculatively to say, you've got any jobs? If we didn't have jobs and they looked like they were interesting, we'd keep them on file. When I needed to find process engineers, The first thing I did was not put an advert in Plastics and Rubber Weekly. Genuinely, that's the trade journal we used to use. The first thing I would do would be to look at that list of people who'd contacted us in the previous 6 months and contact them and say, got some vacancies coming up. Are you interested in talking? Okay, so I know that it can work. Other things you could do if you find a good employer in your field, follow them on LinkedIn. You're on their radar then, and you never know, they may be looking at your profile and thinking, oh, that's interesting. Just drop them a note, drop them a message. Or making a speculative approach, which is what I mentioned, actually writing to them, introducing yourself. Okay, another insider tip. If you're in a specialist discipline, particularly in a technical discipline, and you want to try to contact an organization who are using that discipline, I would suggest you find a technical manager to drop your CV to, rather than the HR manager. HR managers, by and large, don't always understand the technologies of their organizations. I was a chemist working in a chemicals company, so I could, but that's unusual. If you can get your CV in front of the eyes of somebody who understands the benefit of all that you've done in your PhD, they're more likely to wander along to HR and say, hey, can we see this person? They look really interesting. Okay. So that's being curious. Definitely want to be connected. I've mentioned LinkedIn several times. You don't have to be on there, but it's an opportunity for you. And there are millions of people on there now. Even if you just use it to maybe explore what's out there, it can be a really good career research tool. But if you want to be on there and making the most of it, you want to be findable by other people. So I would definitely say complete your profile, connect with a whole load of other people, even just friends, family, other people in the lab. Connect with Ben. Ben has many, many connections. He's an ace connector. I've got a load of connections as well. He can connect with me. And what it means is that, the more connections you have, the more chance there is that you might be connected either directly or one remove from somebody who you might want to talk to. It also means that you are more likely to be found. The more connections you have, the more you engage with LinkedIn, the more complete your profile, the more maybe you follow other employers or join groups, the higher up the search rankings you come if recruiters are trying to find people like you. So another good reason for having a full profile. You can, as I mentioned, you can follow employers. Joining in with groups is a way of also finding people who are interested in your field, because you can see who else is in that group and whereabouts do they work. So it might give you some ideas about employers to look out for. We've got some really great resources online in terms of our webinars and other online resources, which Suzanne and Ben, I think, has been involved in doing some of those as well. So definitely check those out. If you're particularly interested, though, in postdocs or academic roles, then I think the key thing to do is you make sure that potential PIs know your work and know that you're available. So this is about being kind of collegiate, being part of that academic community. You want other people to know that you exist and that you're going to be looking shortly. If you're really good, you'll be able to get your supervisor to maybe introduce you to some of potential PIs who might be looking to recruit in future, but you can do that yourself. So dropping them a speculative, hi, I'm about to be, going to be coming towards the end of my PhD in the next 5-6 months. Really interested in the work you've been doing in this area. If you happen to have anything coming up in that field, be really interested in making contact. If they know that you're out there, then there's more chance that you're going to get to hear about those jobs coming up. And then the final tactic I always use is being courageous.
Before we get too courageous, Elizabeth, can I just throw in, we had a question. Can I throw in a question? It's about the slides. I know you're going to put the video up, but will the slides be available anywhere?
I would love to say yes, but there won't be, because of accessibility issues. We don't put the slides online available now. If you want to drop Ben or me a direct message, I can email them out to you. But you can see them on the video. Basically, you can just fast forward and pause at the point of the slides. You don't have to listen to me again to go all the way through. So that's 2 options for you. Okay. Right, the being courageous. This is where I think you need to tell people what you're looking for. And that's telling people on social media, telling people on LinkedIn, going along to alumni or employer events, being prepared to actually be open and say, actually, you know, I'd really love to get into this field. You really improve your chances of hearing about either people that you can learn from. That's a really lovely way to use LinkedIn, I think, is to use the alumni search. Ideally, finding people who've also already done a PhD in your field, who are in the field that you want to go into. If you can find one of our PhDs, the University of Manchester PhD from your field, who's in the area you want to go into, and you drop them a message on LinkedIn, I really think you improve your chances of them saying, yeah, I'll talk to you. Everybody will remember what it's like trying to make that transition from a PhD into something else. And I think that if you can make that connection with them, they're more likely to at least give you the chance to pick their brains about what it's like moving into that field. Again, professional association networks can be a really good way of trying to find out who else might be able to give you some help and support, or give you some information about working in that field. And again, even just friends and family. One of the key things to do is it's not just about trying to, kind of schmooze your way into a job. It's about learning from other people. And, we can show you all the kind of careers profiles or job sites there are out there, but there's nothing like actually getting to talk to somebody who's doing that work or working with that employer. It gives you a real kind of insight into what it's like, and maybe give you some real sort of hints and tips which you're not going to get from somebody who's a generic careers consultant like myself or Ben. So I would definitely recommend that you push yourself to tell people what you're looking for. Dare to ask them about it. Come and talk to us if you need a bit of coaching on that. But also, being helpful to other people is a great way to get known. So if you can help other people with your insights into either getting into PhDs or just generally helping them with what's going on in your research field, that could be a great way to get known. Right, I'm going to cover what kind of support we can give you from here, some of the specific things we can help you with, and then we'll deal with any questions at the end. So you all know about Career Connect. One of the things I think important to point out, there's one or two bits on here which people aren't always aware of. If you look under either the search button here or down here on the search all opportunities, that's where you can find all the vacancies that we have. So opportunities is our word for vacancies and other types of opportunities. And there's somewhere in the region of about 1,200 jobs being advertised at the moment. So that's full-time jobs, not just kind of part-time jobs or placements. We also advertise activities. So if anybody wants to nip along to the media club session at 1 o'clock today, I know that Louise would be happy to see you there. This is the kind of view you'll get of some of the ads. So ads for full-time jobs, 1,263 was the last screenshot I took a day or so ago. And it shows that it's not all undergrad stuff. So this is a statistician for 30K plus, working for Constello Medical Consulting, and that's an active job at the moment. There are fewer events that we've got coming up at the moment, but as I mentioned earlier, there's that one about working in a think tank coming up. We're still talking about 89 events coming up from sort of last week onwards. So there's still quite a bit coming through. So do look out for these one-off events. One of the things that employers have realized is that with one online event, they can cover the whole country. And so there are more people who are doing that. So I definitely think it's worth having a look at, because it means that you can attend that Institute for Government event early evening, and you don't have to leave Manchester, which is great. We've also got support which will help you with our licensed products, and this one is particularly useful if you think you're moving outside academia. I wouldn't say it's a good one for inside academia, but you can get your CV checked by computer. It'll give you some feedback, both a score and what you can do to improve your CV. It'll help you target your CV to different types of work if you give it an advert as well. And that can be very helpful, particularly to try to recast your PhD into something which isn't necessarily directly related. So that's going to be useful for you. Once you've got your CV up to a certain score, it then unleashes or opens up the CV human feedback appointments as well. So that gives you the opportunity to do that. You can also do some practice interviews. A lot of recruiters are using video interviews as a first sift now, and I don't think that's going to go away even post-pandemic. So we've got something called Shortlist Me, which allows you to go in and to practice online video interviews. So some of them have been set up by recruiters, as you can see there. Some of them have been set up by ourselves. And it allows you to watch yourself back, which is frightening, but also see what people were expecting you to do within those video interviews. As much as anything, it helps you get used to the platform. And I think that's really important if you're going to have to go through one of these video interview platforms. We've also got these things like learning pathways. We've got so much stuff. It's on YouTube channel, it's on our website, it's on videos, it's on sort of licensed products. Sometimes it can be hard to remember where to find all this stuff. So the easiest thing to do is if you go into Career Connect, on the far right hand side of the homepage, there's something called Pathways, a little hexagon icon, and that will get you through to our kind of managed pathways, which takes you through all the different resources we've got. It will give you the direct links to things like Shortlist Me, direct links to Career Set and so on, as well as giving you extra videos and information to help you through, whether it's giving you CVs, cover letters, assessments, all the kind of psychometric tests that you can do or interviews that you can do, obviously. And obviously you don't need to get ready for postgrad study because you're coming out of the other end. Okay. We're also here to support you with the Career Service website and loads of different ways that you can get in touch with us. So we do web chat, we've got queries, which is the way of emailing us through Career Connect. Got all the social media platforms, we do drop-ins, and obviously we do one-to-one appointments. So one-to-one appointments are available to you. Just look for any of the different faculty appointments, which are going to be open to any level of our students, whether that's undergrads all the way through to PhDs. That QR code will take you through to a link tree, which has got all the various different links for the services and support that we can offer you, and the web address is directly there. Okay, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop recording and then we'll deal with any questions that we might have.